Welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Minash. Today we're talking about autonomous taxis, also called Robo taxis, and how they're going to revolutionize real estate. But first, I'd like to introduce our sponsor on this show, the Cost Segregation Guys. If you own investment real estate and haven't looked seriously at cost segregation, you could be leaving significant tax savings on the table. The Cost Segregation Guys help investors accelerate depreciation, improve near-term cash flow, and make more efficient use of capital, all without changing the underlying asset. In a business where preserving cash matters, that's worth paying attention to. And if you're interested in learning more, click on the link in the show notes and you'll be connected with the Cost Segregation Guys directly. And you'll also qualify for a discount because you came from the show. So check out the Cost Segregation Guys using the link in the show notes. On today's show, we're talking about robo-taxis and how they're going to revolutionize real estate. When people think about autonomous vehicles, they think about transportation usually. They think about convenience, safety, maybe labor disruption. Think about all of those folks driving for Uber who will be out of work. From a real estate perspective, the more important question is this: what happens to the built environment when it makes more sense, both from a convenience and economic perspective, to call for a robo-taxi instead of owning a car? That's the real story. For the past 100 years, we've designed cities, apartment buildings, shopping centers, office towers, and even single-family homes around the assumption that every household needs one or more private vehicles sitting still for most of the day. That assumption's about to be challenged. Today, most privately owned vehicles are parked roughly 95% of the time. That's an extraordinarily expensive asset with very low utilization. Autonomous taxis flip that model on its head. A shared vehicle can serve many riders in sequence throughout the day. The result is higher utilization per vehicle, fewer idle hours, and a materially lower need for parking at the point of destination and at your home. Now, does that mean fewer vehicles on the road? Well, not necessarily, at least not right away. In fact, in some markets, you might still see the same number of cars circulating, especially during peak commuting times. But if the number of vehicles on the road doesn't decline dramatically, the number of parked vehicles probably will, and that matters. Let's start with apartment buildings. Parking ratios have long been driven by zoning codes, by lender expectations, by market demand, and perhaps even by conventional wisdom. In many markets, developers are still required to provide anywhere from 1.25 to 2 parking spaces per unit depending on product type and location. That parking is expensive. Structured parking can easily cost tens of thousands of dollars per stall, and underground structured parking is even more. In fact, in my home market, the cost to build a single parking space is more than the cost of the vehicle. So what happens when residents no longer need to store a personal vehicle on site? The first effect is that parking ratios will decline, not at once and not uniformly, but directionally lower over time. A suburban apartment model that once needed 1.5 parking spaces per unit might eventually function at 0.75 or 1.0, especially if autonomous ride services are reliable, if they're low cost, and available around the clock. That changes the math of development. Will zoning codes keep pace with the market reality? In some places, cities are pushing to reduce cars on the road and reduce parking ahead of market demand. Other communities are probably going to lag the market. Less land devoted to parking means more land available for living space, for courtyards, amenities, accessory structures, or additional units. Maybe you can take part of your parking lot and add more units. On an urban infill site, it might mean the difference between a feasible project and one that never gets built. In a suburban site, it might mean less paved area, lower stormwater management cost, and a better overall resident experience. If you buy a downtown office building that comes with a 750-car garage, what's the value of the garage? What is the lifespan of that garage? Now, I'm not asking when the concrete's going to be too old and it's going to fall down. When is that garage going to sit largely vacant? We also need to think about vehicle lifespan. Higher utilization of shared vehicles means each car accumulates mileage much faster. That will shorten the useful life in terms of years and service hours. A privately owned vehicle might last 12 or 15 years because it's lightly used. A robo-taxi could burn through that lifetime in a fraction of the time. But here's the key. Knowing that, the fleet vehicles will be designed for that purpose. We should expect commercial-grade autonomous fleets to be engineered more like aircraft or industrial equipment than consumer automobiles. They'll have more durable interiors, modular components, easier maintenance, faster cleaning, and scheduled refurbishment cycles. So yes, the lifespan measured in calendar years will decline, but the economic output per vehicle will rise dramatically, and that's a different business model entirely. Now let's look at property design. Fewer vehicles need to be parked, then buildings will no longer need to be wrapped in parking. We can rethink frontage, site circulation, and arrival sequence. Instead of large parking fields, properties can emphasize pickup and drop-off zones, short-term queuing, wider pedestrian approaches, weather-protected entrances, and integrated loading for both people and goods. Think about how hotels, multifamily, medical offices, retail centers, and airports. The front door becomes more important. Curb management becomes more important. The design challenge shifts away from storing vehicles to orchestrating the flow. You may also see garages repurposed over time. In some buildings, future parking decks could be designed with a flat slab instead of a sloped one for drainage, and adequate ceiling heights so that they could be later converted into something else, maybe storage, maybe office, light industrial, maybe residential space. That could have future value. So that brings us to the final question. Will peak demand at rush hour delay the large-scale adoption of robotaxis? I think the answer is yes, to a degree. Peak demand is real, and transportation systems are not signed for average demand, at least the roads aren't. They're sized for the peak demand. Morning and evening rush hour creates a surge that's hard to serve efficiently with any fleet. And if the robotaxi fleet is too small and the wait times become unacceptable, people simply won't use it and they'll hang on to their own vehicle. That tension will for sure slow adoption in many markets. But it's not going to stop the adoption. It simply means the rollout will be uneven. Dense urban corridors, airport markets, campuses, retirement communities, and mixed-use districts will likely adopt it first because the trip patterns are more predictable. Broader suburban markets may take longer because the demand is more dispersed and has more peaks. For real estate investors, the message is simple. Start underwriting a future with lower parking demand. Don't assume today's parking ratios are permanent. Don't assume proximity premiums will behave the same way in a world of robotaxis. And when you design a property today, ask whether that parking structure still makes sense 10 years from now. The winners in real estate are not the people who react after the zoning code changes. They're the ones who see where the consumer behavior is going and build for that future today. These are more questions than answers at this point, and we don't know exactly how the future will unfold and by when. But we can see the trend pretty clearly. So how do you design your developments to take that future into account? As you think about that, have an awesome rest of your day. Go make some great things happen, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.